The rain fell from the sky like the world was breaking down in tears. It wasn't a soft rain, the kind that soothes the soul. It was a relentless downpour, heavy and unending, like the sky had finally grown tired of holding its sadness and decided to let it all go at once. It had been raining for days. Storm drains overflowed, gutters roared, and wind howled through the cracks in homes. The sound of the rain had become part of the routine, like background noise no one chose, but everyone heard. In the backyard, soaked and slippery, a medium-sized dog was chasing after a stick he had dragged in himself. His fur was wet, his eyes full of life, and his tail wagged with the innocent belief that the world would always stay the same. He sniffed the ground, jumped over puddles, and every now and then looked curiously into the house, where his humans sat staring at the TV, barely blinking. The tension in the room was thick. The news played loud, interrupted by red alerts flashing across the screen. The name of the town's river echoed between words like emergency, risk, and evacuation. The adults' faces tightened. One held a phone to their ear, trying to reach someone. Another was stuffing documents into a backpack. The child clutched a pillow tightly, not fully understanding, but sensing that something wasn't right. And the dog, he didn't know yet. He didn't feel it yet. He just watched. That was his home. That was his world. But the river, it kept rising. It advanced like a silent, ruthless beast. Streets began to vanish beneath the dark water. The ground gave way. Trees leaned. The sound of water rushing into alleys and yards was like a muffled roar. The civil defense siren sliced through the air. Voices shouted orders on street corners. People ran from their homes, grabbing whatever they could. Someone cried. Someone prayed. Someone ran. Inside the house, quick decisions were being made. Bags, documents, blankets, medicine. Everything became urgent. The family prepared to leave. The dog barked, confused. He was used to following his humans everywhere. But in the rush, in the chaos of fear, someone left the gate slightly open. A surge of water swept into the yard, and he ran. Not out of fear, but instinct. A sound, a smell. Something pulled him to turn the corner before he could hear his name being called behind him. And there, in the middle of a rising storm, with water creeping up the sidewalks and the world quietly falling apart, one invisible phrase hung in the air. No one knew it would be their last day together. Before we continue our story, if the stories we share on this channel touch your heart, filled with care and compassion, please consider subscribing. Every subscription makes a real difference. It helps us continue, covering the costs of food, medicine, and the rescues we carry out. Our mission is to share true stories of animal resilience, and each view brings us closer to telling more of these incredible journeys. In the community tab and in the comments, you'll find information about how to learn more about our project, and, if you feel moved, how to help. No pressure, just kindness. Now, we want to hear from you too. Share your pet story while you listen to Tico's. It might inspire our next video. This channel is a space of warmth, of memory, of lives that truly matter. Here, every life has value. The sound of sirens cut through the air like a blade. One, then another, then another. The neighborhood, once quiet and muffled by rain, now pulsed with panic. Neighbors shouted names, called out to each other, dragged suitcases, tried to load children into cars. The sound of slamming doors, tires cracking glass, and alarms going off was the sound of a world falling apart in real time. The water was already ankle-deep. It surged forward, murky, carrying bags, leaves, broken furniture. A refrigerator floated like a lost boat. The dog, now alone, ran back and forth along the sidewalk, sniffing, barking, trying to follow scents that the flood had already erased. Inside the house, the family was trying to save what they could. The mother gathered documents, dry old photos. The father stuffed clothes, blankets, flashlights into bags. The daughter tried to fit her favorite toy into her backpack, tears running down her face before she even realized. A neighbor appeared at the door shouting, "We have to go! The truck's coming now!" There was no time. The water was visibly rising by the minute. A sofa floated across the living room. Cabinets toppled. picture frames crashed from the walls. The back gate gave way, and water rushed in harder. Outside, the dog returned to the gate, but now it was blocked by water. He barked, scratched, cried. Inside, his name was called. Once, twice. But no one saw him. In the rush, in the panic, they assumed he was already inside somewhere, hiding in a corner like he always did during storms. But he wasn't. The street had become a river. A dirty, fast-moving river that didn't forgive hesitation. The dog climbed onto the sidewalk, trying to find higher ground. His eyes searched for familiar faces, the sound of his human calling his name. But there was only noise. Too much noise. A car door slammed. An engine started. The emergency truck pulled away, packed with families holding onto bags, children, memories. The dog chased after it for a while, then stopped. His body shook. His paws slipped. The water was already at his belly. It all happened in minutes. He was left behind. The wind tore at roofs. Trees bent low. Lightning tore the sky apart with fury. And there he was, standing in the middle of the street, water up to his chest, heart pounding, as the world collapsed around him, alone, without understanding, with no one. And as the last silhouette disappeared around the flooded corner, he still waited, as if somehow his humans would come back for him. The truck rumbled on through flooded streets, like an improvised ship sailing through the memories of a collapsing city. With every yard traveled, it left behind lives, stories, everything that once felt like home. Families huddled together in the back, trying to shield themselves from the rain that still hadn't stopped. No one spoke. Only the engine and distant sirens filled the air. Then, a voice broke the silence. "Mom, where's Tico?" The girl, eyes wide, clutched a damp pillow tightly. Her mother turned slowly, as if the question had shattered something she was trying not to remember. Their eyes met. The father, sitting nearby, clenched his fists. He probably found a corner in the house, sweetheart. He must be hiding, but even he didn't believe it. There had been too much chaos, too little time. They were focused on saving the lives in that truck. For the mother, that meant saving her daughter first. Too much confusion. And deep down, a guilt that was beginning to grow in the silence of the ride. The mother pulled out her phone, tried to call neighbors, the fire department, anyone. The signal was weak. She finally reached civil defense. The voice on the other end was calm but cold. "Ma'am, we can't go back right now. The area is unstable. We'll send teams when it's safe." She pleaded, cried, described the dog, the yard, the neighborhood. But the answer echoed the same helpless tone. "There's no way back." Meanwhile, Tico wandered. Nose low, he waded through cold, dark water. Objects floated around him. Toys, furniture pieces, bottles, a plastic doll spinning in place. The current was tricky. He tried to climb onto things but kept slipping. His legs shook. His fur was heavy from water and cold. The rain didn't stop. Fat drops fell like liquid stones, hitting his exhausted body with relentless force. Lightning flashed across the sky, revealing for split seconds a city that no longer looked like itself. Tree shadows twisted in the wind. Houses stood like soaked ghosts. Tico curled up next to a half-submerged wall. He was tired, wet, hungry, scared. Instinct told him to keep moving, but his body didn't listen like it used to. The freezing water crept up to his chin. He stood up and kept going, stumbling, searching for something, anything that felt safe. In the distance, another dog barked, then silence. A thunderclap shattered the sky. He bolted in fear and hit something sharp, a piece of glass. He whimpered but didn't stop. He had to get out. Darkness swallowed everything. Only lightning revealed, for brief moments, what fear tried to hide. Tico wandered, lost, in a maze of dirty water and fading hope. And that night, a night that seemed endless, he learned what fear really was, the kind that clings to your skin, that gnaws from the inside, that doesn't even have a name. The night dragged on like the flood itself, cold, silent, and cruel. The city, once full of life, now looked like a sunken stage where everything had been wiped away. And there, in the middle of the dark vastness, Tico kept trying to hold on. His injured paw throbbed with every movement. The icy water stung the wound like tiny needles piercing his skin with each ripple. He limped, slipped, sank up to his belly. His muscles no longer responded as before. Strength was running out. But still, he tried to swim, tried to survive. The current pushed him without mercy, like an invisible force dragging him farther from everything he knew. His eyes, once sharp, were cloudy with exhaustion. His soaked nose could smell only mud, rust, and filth. The city had become a dark sea, with no shoreline, no scent of home. At one point, he found what looked like a floating door. He tried to climb on. His good paw found a grip, but the other gave out. He slipped, plunged completely under, and sank. Water filled his mouth. His eyes. Everything went black for a moment. But Tico didn't give up. He fought. He moved his legs as best he could, cutting through the water with the last of his energy. He burst back to the surface in a desperate gasp, panting, coughing, gasping for breath. Thunder cracked overhead, and he howled. A long, aching howl. Not a call, but a cry, a plea for help. A cry from the soul. The sound echoed through the flooded alleys, but no one heard. The water didn't stop. It dragged him, like it wanted to carry him somewhere with no way back. He spun, bumped into debris, tried to swim sideways. His legs kicked, less coordinated, more panicked. The injured paw bled slowly, tinting the water in faint spirals hidden by darkness. His body faltered. Every meter forward was like climbing a mountain. Every attempt to climb onto debris ended in failure. His head started to droop. His neck ached. The cold reached his bones. The wind sliced like glass. But something inside him still held on. A thread of life. A spark of hope. Maybe it was the memory of the girl's voice, or the scent of the blanket he used to sleep on. Or maybe it was just instinct, screaming when everything else said to give up. Once more, he tried to climb onto floating debris, a piece of broken roof. This time, he held on with 3 paws. He lay there, panting, breathing fast, shallow. His body trembled, his gaze distant. The storm went on. The world went on. But he endured, alone, wounded, and exhausted, but still alive. Morning light had yet to come. Darkness felt endless, as if time had paused to silently witness the suffering of those left behind. Tico now lay on a piece of roof, slowly drifting in the current, barely able to keep his eyes open. His body shivered, not from fear anymore, but from the cold that had sunk too deep, into his bones, his breath, his heart. The piece of roof was small, slanted, slippery, but for him, in that moment, it was everything. An unlikely harbor in the middle of a hostile sea. His injured paw rested off to the side, still bleeding in slow, quiet intervals. The other 3 clung to the wet wood as if holding on to life itself. All around, there was only water. No more sirens, no voices, no thunder. Just the low, endless hum of floodwater licking walls, dragging debris, whispering of what was lost. The world seemed suspended, breathing slowly, in mourning. Tico didn't howl anymore, didn't cry. He had entered the state of someone who has given all they have. His gaze was vacant, his head lowered, breathing shallow. But still there, still holding on. The roof floated in circles, pushed now by the current, now by debris. A rusted gate floated by, then a wheelchair. The water made no choices. The sun tried to break through the clouds, but its light was pale, as if asking permission before rising over the sorrow. A soft golden glint touched the water's surface, reflecting in puddles like shattered mirrors. Tico lifted his eyes for a moment. The sky no longer felt like a threat, just empty. The pain in his body felt distant now. The cold, constant. Hunger, forgotten for a while. Only exhaustion remained, heavy as a wet stone across his back. By instinct, he curled tighter on the roof, trying to hold in what warmth he had left. His tail wrapped around his belly. His nose rested on his good paw. His eyes still searched, even if he no longer knew what for. Minutes passed, or hours. Time didn't matter. There, surrounded by water, memories, and silence, Tico discovered what raw endurance is, the kind that comes after panic, when strength is gone and only will remains. A distant hum of an engine cut through the silence. A new sound. A different motor. He perked his ears. A boat, but it was too early to know. He stayed still, quiet, as if afraid that any movement might scare away the chance of being saved. For now, he had a roof, a floating floor, and he was alive. It wasn't much, but it was everything. The world seemed to have slowed down, as if, for a moment, the tragedy itself paused to observe. No more shouting, no horns, no chaos, just the steady sound of water lapping against submerged surfaces like a beast finally full. Tico breathed with effort. His ribs rose and fell slowly, straining. His body felt strange. Fur stuck to his skin. His injured paw stretched out, throbbing in silence. But he had made it. After all the failed attempts, the slipping, the impacts, and the near unbearable fear of drowning, he had found shelter. A floating roof, from some house he didn't know. Slanted, cracked, but strong enough to hold his tired body. There he lay, still shaking. The cold wasn't just physical anymore. It came from within, from a wounded soul, from abandonment, from doubt. His paws trembled uncontrollably, and his curled tail was his only blanket. All around, a strange silence, one that hurt more than the noise of chaos, only the sound of the water, that constant murmur, like a city sobbing softly in grief. Bits of lives kept drifting past him, floating aimlessly. A broken wooden chair, a child's shoe, a pot, a swollen pillow. Stories dissolved into the current, and silence, and Tico, in the middle of it all, just another forgotten piece in a world too rushed to look back. He raised his nose. The scent was of mud, rust, and dampness. His vision blurred from exhaustion. His eyes, fixed on the gray horizon, no longer searched. They just held on. The storm had passed, but the fear remained. Not the fear of dying, but of being forgotten. The light of dawn began to press through the heavy clouds. A dull tone, colorless, as if even the sun mourned. But that single ray of light was enough. It touched the roof gently, warming a sliver of the frozen world. Tico's ears twitched, still alert, still alive. A seagull passed in the distance, and the now gentler wind stirred leaves caught in debris. Everything was in ruins, but there was also something new. A beginning, however uncertain. He didn't know where he was, or how long he could hold on. But in that moment, on that makeshift roof, he was safe. Not secure, but safe. It was a relief. Brief. Fragile. But real. And sometimes in a world falling apart, all someone needs is a piece of rooftop to remember that there's still ground. 2 days passed in silence, hunger, and cold. Time drifted quietly with the floodwaters. The rescue boat moved slowly, cutting through the muddy water like a tired arrow. When the rescuers spotted Tico, lying on a piece of roof, they didn't say anything, but their eyes exchanged a silent understanding. He was at his limit. One of the men approached carefully, extending his hand. Tico didn't react with fear or joy. He just stayed still, allowing himself to be rescued, as if finally surrendering the weight of his own survival. Wrapped in a dry blanket, he was placed in the boat alongside other small rescued lives, a pregnant cat inside a crate, 2 dogs tied with makeshift ropes. No one barked. No one meowed. Trauma had quieted even the most basic instincts. The shelter was large, but not enough to hold all the suffering that had gathered. The floor was lined with tarps. Temporary fences separated animals into groups. People arrived constantly. Some brought blankets, others bowls of food. Some offered baths, affection, or used toys. And some just sat quietly beside the cages, offering their silent presence. Tico was placed in a corner, away from the noise. His paw was examined, cleaned, bandaged. It was already infected from the dirty water. He was given food, fresh water, a folded mattress for a bed, but he didn't touch any of it. He just lay there, his body still alert, his eyes fixed on the shelter's door. He was waiting, maybe without knowing exactly for what, or for whom. Volunteers tried to distract him. They spoke gently, offered biscuits near his nose, stretched out their hands. But he didn't react. His tail didn't wag. His ears didn't perk up. His spirit was still on that rooftop, in that flooded street, in the house where a little girl used to call his name. All around, other dogs barked, cats meowed, some desperate, others relieved to be dry at last. But Tico remained distant. The sound he wanted to hear wasn't there. He longed for a familiar voice, a known step, a scent that would say, "You're safe now, truly safe." Time passed slowly. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray. The shelter kept filling. More victims, more volunteers, more murmurs. But Tico stayed still, watching the door with tired but steady eyes. Every time it opened, he lifted his head. Just a little. As if, for 1 second, he dared to believe. But no one came. And then he would lay back down. Quiet, curled up, waiting. His body was safe, yes, but his heart was still adrift. The sun finally appeared, pale and hesitant, like it was ashamed to shine after so much sorrow. The city had begun revealing its wounds in the daylight. It wasn't the roar of the storm that haunted now, but the silence that followed. And among the survivors scattered in shelters, trucks, and blocked roads, there they were. Tico's family. They had been taken to a school turned into a shelter. Their bed was a piece of foam on the floor. Meals came in plastic containers. Showers were a bucket behind the basketball court. But they were alive. All of them. The mother, the father, and the little girl who had been asking about Tico since the moment they arrived. At first, they said he must have found a hiding spot. Later, maybe a neighbor had rescued him. But as the days passed and no news came, hope gave way to a hollow, growing ache. The father left every day. He visited information posts, talked to rescuers and volunteers, showed a faded photo of a caramel-colored dog with droopy ears and kind eyes. "Have you seen this dog?" Most answered with a sad smile and a shake of the head. Others said, "There are so many dogs out there, sir, but I don't remember this one." The mother tried to stay calm, comforting the daughter, but sometimes she left the shelter just to cry alone. Behind the cracked school walls, they had seen entire families reunited, people rescuing cats from rooftops, birds in cages. Even a goat had found its way home. But Tico, nothing. The girl held the empty collar like it was a broken promise. Sometimes she pressed her face to it and whispered, "He can still smell us, right?" And the mother would say, "Yes, he can," even if she wasn't sure anymore. One night, the father finally broke. He sat in the middle of the gym, surrounded by mattresses and muffled voices, and cried into his hands, with a heavy chest and a broken heart. He had promised nothing would happen to Tico. And now, he blamed himself. For assuming the dog would follow, for not checking, for not going back, for not having time. Outside, the waters had started to recede, slowly. Streets reappeared, but so did the wreckage. Collapsed walls, homes torn open, memories scattered like trash. The city was now a wounded body, and everyone was searching for the pieces of themselves they'd left behind. Among all the ruins, one truth remained. Love. That kind of love that keeps searching, even through the mud and the loss, and they were still searching. Time passed. Not quickly, but with a slow, dragging pace, like it was honoring the shared grief of a broken city. The sun gradually reclaimed its place in the sky, no longer timid, now warm, persistent, as if trying to dry the tears left on the sidewalks. The water, once merciless, was pulling back slowly, revealing what it had hidden. Streets coated in mud, twisted gates, toys tangled in tree branches. At the shelter, routines were beginning to take shape again. Volunteers' voices mixed with barking dogs and the soft purring of cats. New blankets arrived. Donated food, vitamin pouches, boxes of medicine, and among it all, Tico, still resting in his corner, now with a blanket just for him and a paper collar labeled in pen, Survivor 12. His paw was getting better. The bandage was no longer soaked with discharge. The swelling had gone down. He started making small movements, getting up for water, shifting positions, watching the activity around him. Once, he even ate a little, just enough to make the volunteers glance at each other with quiet relief. It was a first step. But what hurt wasn't physical. Every day, the shelter's doors opened dozens of times. Families entered with anxious eyes, trembling hands, soft voices. They were looking for someone, calling out names between the cages, whistling. And sometimes, they found them. Tears would flow. Bonds were restored. Dogs jumped. Cats purred in relief. Others weren't so lucky, and among those still waiting was Tico. He watched, didn't bark, didn't approach, just watched. Every time the door opened, his eyes would turn toward it like they expected the impossible. As if, any second now, she'd appear. The girl with the sweet voice and small hands, running toward him, shouting, "Tiku!" But that didn't happen. Instead, there were strangers, voices he didn't recognize, scents that didn't reach his heart. It was like watching a movie he was no longer part of. At night, he dreamed of the front gate at home, the sound of pots in the kitchen, the couch where he curled up near the father's feet, dreamed of the girl covering him with the pink blanket, dreamed of life before the flood. And when he woke up, it was still the shelter, still cages, still the lingering smell of fear that animals leave behind. Some volunteers called him strong, others a fighter, but he just felt absent, like part of him was still out there, stuck on a corner, waiting to be rescued. He waited, and deep down, that's what kept him alive. That morning the shelter was especially busy. More supply trucks had arrived. More people were coming and going. The floodwaters had receded in most of the city, and the roads that were once blocked were slowly being reopened. Life was beginning to return to the spaces the flood had claimed and emptied, but cautiously, gently, like someone stepping onto wounded ground. Tico remained in his usual spot. He walked more steadily now, though with a slight limp. The wound on his paw was nearly healed. His appetite had returned, though modestly, but his eyes were still searching. It was around 9:30 when the door opened once again. A trio stepped inside. A woman with tired eyes, a man with a backpack still soaked in memories, and a little girl with small hands, holding a faded pink collar. They paused for a moment at the entrance, scanning the rows of temporary enclosures. The sounds inside were familiar. Anxious barking, the creak of metal gates, voices calling names, a few quiet sobs. The girl narrowed her eyes, as if trying to see through the crowd. "He could be in any one of these," the father murmured. The girl walked slowly. Her eyes scanned each animal. Some jumped. Others barked loudly. A few wagged their tails at the sight of visitors. But she was looking for one particular gaze, one particular silence. Then they reached his pen. Tico was lying down, as usual, his nose resting on his good paw. When the girl approached, he lifted his eyes. He looked at the trio for a few seconds. He didn't move. Just another day, just another visit. Another unfamiliar scent, maybe. But something shifted. The woman softly whispered his name, as if waking a memory long buried and tangled in her throat. "Tico?" That's when he caught the scent. A familiar smell cut through the air. A scent buried deep in some forgotten corner of his soul. The girl repeated, her voice trembling now. "Tico, it's me." His tail moved. Just a little, then more. And then he stood up. The tired look in his eyes brightened. His head tilted. His paws took cautious steps forward. And suddenly, as if a lightning bolt of memory shot through his chest, he knew. He ran. He ran hard, fast, with everything in him. The girl dropped to her knees, arms wide open, face wet with tears. He jumped. He howled. He whimpered, as if pouring days of silence into seconds. The woman knelt and hugged them both. The father tried not to cry, but couldn't. The volunteers stopped. Everything went quiet. Some smiled. Others wiped their eyes. The wait was over. The story began again. There, among barks, hugs, and a worn pink collar now full of meaning. In that reunion there was pain, relief, and a promise. A promise to never be separated again. A promise to rebuild. A promise of love. The truck moved slowly down the dirt road. Signs of the flood were everywhere. Fallen trees, piles of debris on sidewalks, broken furniture stacked like rushed scars. It no longer looked like the same city. Everything felt different, worn down, quiet. In the back of the truck, the family sat together, mother, father, daughter, and Tico, now clean, with a blue bandana around his neck and eyes alert, steady, as if he was finally part of something bigger than the pain. The truck stopped in front of a bent gate. This was it, the house where it all began, where the rain first fell, where Tico ran through the yard, unaware the world was about to fall apart. They stepped down in silence. Neighbors were arriving too, each facing their own ruins. It was a kind of collective return to what was left behind. A necessary step, even if painful. But at least their house was still standing, and the ground was safe, unlike many who would remain displaced for years, searching for a new beginning. The girl held tightly to Tico's leash. The gate opened with difficulty, groaning as if resisting the reveal of what lay behind it. The sight was harsh. The yard was caked in dried mud. Part of the porch had collapsed. Inside, the house was just stained walls, watermarks, broken furniture, soaked photos still stuck to the floor. But no one cried. It was as if the suffering had passed through so many stages that now only a calm emptiness remained, and the will to start over. Tico slipped off the leash and wandered through the house on his own. He sniffed the corners, stopped in the kitchen doorway, looked at the ruined couch as if remembering where he used to sleep, walked into the girl's room and paused at the dismantled bed. Now just wet wood and torn foam, but his eyes didn't show sadness. Tico was just recognizing. Like someone who remembers, accepts, and moves forward. The girl followed him with light steps. She knelt behind him. "We're going to fix everything, okay?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. The mother was gathering things off the clothesline. The father was pulling a broken cabinet away from the entry. Their hands were already rebuilding, before any plans had been made. And that's when the simplest miracle happened. They smiled. Yes, the house was wrecked. Yes, some losses could never be replaced. But Tico was there, alive, breathing, standing on the ground the flood tried to erase. His presence meant more than just a reunion. It was a symbol, a reminder that even when everything falls apart, what truly matters can still endure. The house was in ruins, but the family was not. And slowly, among bricks, wood, and memories, they began to rebuild. Together, time passed. Not quickly, but at the pace of someone learning to live again. The first days were the hardest. Buckets of dirty water, hammers in hand, new tiles replacing the broken ones. There was mud even on the highest parts of the walls. Clothes lost, toys unrecognizable, books swollen with mold. The house was just a shell, but they were inside. And that was everything. Tico followed every step, not just as a witness, but as part of the rebuilding. He wandered through the debris with his tail wagging, trailed the adults as they moved back and forth, peeked curiously under sheets covering the furniture they could still salvage. And when the girl cried, he lay beside her, offering warmth, presence, and silence. He was more than company. He was emotional foundation. The neighbors returned too. Children played among piles of bricks. Volunteers came and went. Donations arrived in plain bags, but each carried the weight of gold. Every gesture, every kind word, every bit of help was a small light on the path. Bit by bit, the structure of the house rose again. The walls got a fresh coat of paint. Even the makeshift windows let the sunlight back in. The yard was cleared, and one day, Tico dug in the same corner where he used to bury old bones, as if to say, "Yes, this still belongs to me." Everyone laughed. It was the first real laugh in a long time. Neighborhood kids came to play there again. Tico ran after them joyfully. He jumped, played, let himself be hugged. He had become more than the family dog. He was a symbol, a living story of resilience. Many adults stopped to kneel and pet his head, as if thanking him for surviving, as if hope itself lived in him. Every wall rebuilt carried its weight, not just of cement, but of memory. The front door, reinstalled with care, was the same one Tico had walked through without knowing the world was about to collapse. Now, crossing it again, He stepped not just into the house, but into a new chapter. The girl planted flowers in the yard. She said she wanted to color the earth, as if telling the universe, things still bloom here. And Tico, curious as ever, dug right beside them, nearly pulling everything out. But he was forgiven with a kiss on the nose and a promise. It's okay. We'll plant them again. Routine returned, with simplicity, with imperfections, with longing. But it returned. And in the heart of that family, every brick carried more than concrete. It carried memories. And hope. Tico didn't need much to be happy. A spot on the couch, a bowl of food, the girl's hand resting on his head at dusk. They had everything again. Not exactly as before, but with something more. The certainty that love, when it endures, can rebuild any home. Together. Always. At the heart of every tragedy, there are silences louder than any siren. Tico's story, though unique, echoes the collective grief of a wounded land. He represents thousands of lives, both human and animal, that faced one of the darkest moments in Brazil's recent history. The flood that devastated Rio Grande do Sul in 2024 wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a wound carved into the soul of a nation. These were days when the sky seemed endless, when the ground vanished beneath our feet, and everything certain turned to mud. Entire families were swept away. Neighborhoods disappeared. Schools, churches, bridges became submerged memories. And amid so many irreparable losses, there were eyes that couldn't speak of what they saw. Soaked fur, injured paws, tiny bodies trying to swim against a merciless current. Animals, so many. Some died in their owners' arms, submerged together, as if the only possible escape was to leave this world side by side. Others were left behind, running through flooded streets, waiting for someone who would never return. Tico was one of them. But he was given the chance to come back. His story, shared here and sent to us by a beloved follower, is just one. But it carries within it all the stories that couldn't be told, because surviving in a landscape of collapse is not just luck. It is resilience. It is faith. It is love. Tico stands for every dog rescued in makeshift boats, every cat found atop a floating wardrobe, every horse tied to a tree that survived for days. He is a symbol of the quiet strength of animal rescuers who, even scared and lacking resources, braved mud, cold, and mourning to save whatever still breathed. He's part of the story of volunteers who slept on wet mattresses, skipped meals to feed rescues, gave their time, their cars, even their homes. While many lost everything, others found a mission to make sure more lives weren't lost. And so, thousands of Ticos were found, hiding on rooftops, inside closets, atop fridges, wounded, scared, but alive. And they were cared for, treated, held by hands that didn't ask, "Whose is this?" only said, "You're safe now." But not all of them made it home. Tico did. He recognized his family in the crowd, ran with the strength of someone who had waited until the last second, and jumped into the girl's arms as if the whole world was being rebuilt in that hug. That moment was more than beautiful. It was proof that love, when true, knows how to wait. Today, this part of Brazil is trying to rebuild. The sun shines again, yes, but it still lights up ruins. The streets still carry the scent of tragedy. The walls of many homes are marked halfway up with stains, and some absences will never be filled. But life insists, and in that insistence lives the truest form of beauty. Tico's story is also a call to action. Now that the waters have receded, it's time to look to those who remain. The shelters are still full. Many animals are still waiting for reunions that may never come. Others are simply waiting for a new beginning. And that is why telling stories like Tico's matters. Spaying and neutering is an act of responsibility. It prevents lives from being born, only to be abandoned. Adopting is a gesture of love. It sees value in those the world often overlooks. Not abandoning is the bare minimum, because love should never be disposable. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel. It's not just a click. It's a way to say you believe in this work, that you value the quiet fight of those who care for beings who can't ask for help. Every subscription helps us continue. It helps cover food, medicine, surgeries, and maybe one day build a shelter. It helps us find homes for those who've never had one. It gives voice to the voiceless. You can also share this story, because maybe it will reach someone who needs a reason to keep going, or someone ready to make a difference. And if you've already adopted, rescued, or helped, know that you are part of this too. Kindness multiplies when it's shared. Tico's story is yours now too, because it speaks of hope, reunion, and healing. And in the end, that's what we all need. A roof, a lap, someone who won't give up on us. Tico survived the flood. But more than that, he survived being forgotten, being alone, being silenced, because love found him again. And as long as stories like his exist, our mission continues. Together, always. And before you go, watch our next video. There, I'll tell you about Bento, a dog who lived through abuse in a neighborhood where everyone saw, but no one acted. It's a story that challenges us to face silence, neglect, and the power of those who choose to break the cycle. I'll be waiting for you there.